Welcome everyone to the Live My Best Life podcast. Today we're here with Glenn. Hello, Glenn.
Hello, thank you for having me back, Jake.
No worries, I'm glad to have you back. And today we're talking about the tribunal and the review process and everything in between. It's good for us to know the different options that we have if we're rejected or if we don't get what we want in the plan, which is why we're talking today. So just for those that missed the other episode, which people should totally go watch.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Who are you? What do you do? And kind of what's your experience?
Okay, so currently I'm the NDIS manager and intake manager at Richmond Wellbeing. So we process referrals for residential sites, also for NDIS supports. And I also manage the outreach teams, or oversee the team leaders who oversee the outreach teams for the NDIS. That's it in a nutshell.
So talk a bit about the experience that you've had kind of either with review processes within the NDIS or the tribunal.
I think I mentioned this last time. We had a lovely lady who was in one of our block funded programs and was trying to access the NDIS or workers on her behalf, and rejection after rejection after rejection. And this lady had, with her worker, transition worker, had a lot of evidence, supporting evidence, documentation, doctor's letters, support letters, everything. And then one day, she went through and she got a really good plan. Great, baffling as to from being rejected to suddenly having a really good plan. I mean, good outcome, but it just took some time. She's doing very well now. So that's kind of the starts, and that's why I've said, I think I said previously, if you can get into one of these block funded programs like the Commonwealth Psychosocial, great people, help to gather evidence, help push things through. They know the NDIS, they know the system. So that's a good way to get in. It's a bit hard, in my opinion anyway, if you're not in the know about the NDIS and you're trying to access it for a family member or a doc, but again, you can do that. You can, but these other programs that are block funded generally are a good way to start.
Yeah, so I've got someone who has an NDIS plan, and one of their OTs said in passing, hey, we need to do a review to get you some more funding. And both of those, the couple that was involved, they panicked. They'd like, well, what's a review? Will that affect everything? What happens with this? And they just weren't aware. And when you don't have someone who is in the know around you, it can create a lot of stress.
Well, you have to look at why is the OT looking for more funding? Is it for the OT or is it for overall? Because what will happen is you'll get acknowledgement of that plan is going into review. And then they may say, we're going to, let's just say it was for OT, and they may say, are you happy for the rest of the plan to be basically a carbon copy of the previous one? While that is in review, of course, service providers can still access that plan until the review is completed and there's a new plan issued. But if a worker or a service provider does come to you and said, okay, look, we're going to review your plan, you want to know why. Why? Because maybe you're happy with your plan. But funding for things like functional capacity assessments, stuff like that, can be small. Same as support coordination. As we've said before, core funding is the larger and more flexible of the line items in the plan.
Yeah. So kind of backtracking a little bit to the steps for if the NDIS make a decision and you don't agree with it and you think you should be getting funding, or if you're rejected or something along those lines, the first step is that internal review. And so if it's changing goals or address or details, it doesn't take that long. It isn't that.
No, that's minor, and you can ring the NDIS, or you can, with your worker, can call the NDIS and provide them with those details.
Yeah, and then there's a bit more hefty side of that internal review by the NDIA, and that's around moving funding from one to another, seeking more funding, or if you've been rejected and you kind of want to be approved and you want to get a review around that, that's the more hefty, lengthy process.
Yeah, so for example, if someone gets a plan and they have OT, support coordination or psychosocial recovery coaching, but what they want is drop-in supports or outreach supports, and they've got a core budget of say $5,000 over 12 months, that's not going to provide much. So you may decide to have an early plan review or an early plan intervention, some people call them, and it comes out at 3 months later or whatever, and it hasn't been favourable or in your favour. You can either request another review or you can go to the ATT.
Yes.
Yeah.
The AAT.
AAT.
I saw an interesting stat around the AAT, where 88% of NDIA decisions that have gone through are completed in a year. So say January 1st, you put in for that AAT review, then by December 31st, 88% of them have gone through. Now that's interesting because there's a lot of stigma around them taking a long time. So if that, in a year's time, that stat might be revealed to have been going down. Because I know there's over 4,000 active NDIA cases, which is bonkers. And there's a lot of people waiting to get access, which I think it was 73% of decisions are overturned from their original decision. From NDIA cases, which is huge. That's saying 73% of the time NDIA have gotten it wrong, which is bonkers.
One of the other things too about the tribunal is they may be, at the time of the original decision, there may be new information out. So they can actually look at that and say, okay, well at that time we didn't do this. 12 months later we do. So they may have access to more of that information.
And they can ask, say, hey, we need this specific kind of report, and then based off that new evidence, kind of make that decision. But at least then it's not just a rejection letter, it's a, hey, this is what's missing, go and get this, and then we can decide and go from there.
Yeah, and they'll look at all the evidence from A to Z.
You've got a bit of experience at the moment with a case through the Administrative Appeals Tribunal.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. This young person has actually come a long way in their recovery. And I think we may have touched on it last time as well. So from someone who really didn't communicate or talk a lot to being very loquacious, we got them a membership, the Community Leisure Centre, which is, some people call it a gym, but it's so much more than that. Yes, there's a gymnasium, there's also swimming, there's also yoga, other sort of things that are focused on well-being, and this person has really benefited from that. So I think we got that paid for around the time when core funding became a lot more flexible during the pandemic. This time not so flexible, unfortunately, but I've sort of built a case and got an OT report. I provided a letter of support and other bits and pieces, but anyway, it came back, it was rejected. So I did speak to someone at an LAC who actually understood and said, I think that's just cause. However, I'm going on leave, so could you send this to my colleague? A little bit of a hoop jumping. I put that through to them. They said, oh, look, in all likelihood. And I said, well, no, can you lodge it anyway? Because if it gets rejected, I'm going to protest.
So lodging an internal review?
No, this is just actually lodging the request.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, okay. So, and if it comes back no, then I'm going to challenge, because I don't and this is a good thing. It's not about me being pushy. It's about me trying to get people to understand that everybody's different. And that, so what I mean, you can have a personal trainer, but you can't have a gym membership so I don't understand that. But the other one too is he has, now I don't know a whole lot about sleep apnea or how it's graded or whatever, but I know he's got it quite seriously. And there's a link between schizophrenia and sleep apnea.
Yes.
So that has been declined or pushed back. So I'm going to challenge that again. Obviously, I'm going to get a lot more evidence, and I'll speak to a bit more people in the know, and I'm going to present that too. That'll likely probably have to go to the AAT. I don't know why I struggled there. I only say it 15 times a day. But anyway, we'll take that to the AAT likely, and hopefully that'll be a good outcome there. And believe it or not, I think we've probably got a better chance of getting funding for that than the membership.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be that way, but...
Because as you said, it's not you being pushy, it's you going for what you believe is right for the people we're supporting. But then there's also the flip side of sometimes we might get rejected and it's a fair rejection. And when you look at it, it's like, okay, maybe there might be another community support or something else going on here. But when the decision's there and you disagree and you believe it should have been accessed, that's when you push for these reviews.
You've also got to really look, when you have plan reviews, it's not about getting more funding, because you really need it, just get it tailored to what you need. And that way there's, the overall budget doesn't go up by billions every couple of years. So for this person, they only require sort of face-to-face support for a few hours a week. They get a lot out of that. They like to debrief about their week. They, from having someone taking them to this leisure centre daily, they're now getting a bit more comfortable, and they are actually getting on the train themselves. So it's been like climbing a granite hill for him, but he's getting there day by day. And to take this away from him now, because he can't really afford it, would be a huge disservice to his recovery. the sleep apnea thing too has caused, obviously, problematic medical and stuff like that. And he was trying to save for that. But it's the physical side is linked to the mental side. There's a connection there, and and there's evidence of that. So that's what we'll put forward for that.
Yeah. So what's your approach been? So okay, it needs to be reviewed. I might need to go to the tribunal. So what approach have you taken in tackling?
Well, for me, it's just I'm prepping now. So what I'm doing is looking at all the evidence that we've already got. Going through to OT reports, these letters of support that come from me, from the GP. The GP support letter is in favour of this person, but it doesn't go into much detail. So I'm going to get a lot of that evidence myself. So it would be a lot of researching, putting it all together, and having someone else, maybe the OT, look at it with me and the team leaders, and just seeing if we because maybe we have all the evidence, but we haven't presented it in a way that's convincing enough.
And unbiased.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's not about me. It's not about just funds. It's even if this does go through, it could be supporting other people that are in similar circumstances, and that's part of the NDIS. Is along the way learning, trying to build cases that yes, this is conducive to someone's recovery, whereas they may not think so at the moment. But the NDIS is still young. We're still growing. But there's no point in getting rude, pushy. It's not going to help. You really need to come back, almost reset. And again, like I said, look at your evidence. What else can we get to prove this case? If it doesn't work, back to the drawing board. We go down a different path.
All the tribunal cases are available online in terms of they're de-identified, and they can give you a bit of a heads up for going, okay, in this case, this is how this was approached, and this is relevant to mine in some way. And also, as you've said, gathering more evidence that are maybe worded in the right way. Yeah. Because the AAT, the tribunal will go through everything. There was a case about a month ago where there was over 1,000 pages of evidence, and they went through it page by page. So they will go through everything.
I've got about 35.
But as long as the evidence is done right, and as you've said, get different people to have their perspectives, OTs.
And how do you present your evidence too? We don't want a thesis. I mean, I think 1,000 pages, I don't know the stories. Maybe it does require 1,000 pages, but I think lots of points. You can always build on those points. But if you're on the panel, you want to see these points, highlight these facts, and that stick out.
Speaking of stats, I can't remember the exact number, but most cases going to the AAT with the NDIA are then solved outside of that hearing. So privately between the NDIA and the individual. And a lot of the cases that do go to the NDIA are then overturned for the perspective of the individual going for it. So a lot of the time, you don't necessarily have to lawyer up and spend a lot of money for that awesome legal representation. Because I think it was only 1/3 of people that go to the AAT do have some sort of representation, and a lot of success has been found.
Well, you got to think that the panel consists of all these types of professionals as well. So, and you can have representation as far as a worker, or an advocate from another department, stuff like that, or a family member.
We had someone go through the training a fair few months ago, and they got told that their client was going through that process, and he had to sit in on the phone call of the hearing in a couple of weeks' time, and he was in the middle of prepping for that. So it can be you or me or anybody else in the field that's supporting them to support them through the process. It doesn't necessarily have to be that legal aid.
Just to step back a little bit, I've always mentioned that a good worker needs to understand how a plan operates, or works. If you look at a plan and think, oh, we just don't have enough funds, let's go for a review, you need to stop and unpack that a little bit more. That's when we're not just after more funds. We need to get a support category or a line item, something in the plan we review. That's a good way to start. If you don't, that outcome doesn't occur, then you go into the tribunal.
Yeah, and it's about knowing, okay, what exactly are you challenging? That line item or not that part of the plan that's needed. Or when you get rejected and you get the quote of that part of the act. Okay, do you fully understand what that means and what the act is referring to? Because you're going to have to prove that what you're challenging is correct. And so to understand what you're challenging is the first step.
Also, you could end up with the same plan after all that time. And someone might say, well, why would I go to tribunal for $100 or $200 noise cancelling headphones? It might take 12 months. But again, it's that's hopefully that doesn't happen. But that would be unfortunate. But you get the result in the end. And as you've said, there are I think 4,000 cases. Yeah, but you're hopeful for an outcome. you know. So again, knowing the plan, understanding what you're contesting or what you want reviewed.
Yes. So as a bit of a solution for that 4,000 active cases, Bill Shorten's trialling a kind of a super team of different people who are together employed directly to get through as many cases as possible. I think it's being trialled in South Australia or Tasmania.
Oh, yes, I did read.
Yes. And if that's successful for cases there, then they're going to bring that Australia-wide, which if that's the case, then the tribunal might be a bit more of an available option to people that want to get these decisions a bit quicker after that internal review.
I do unfortunately have a skewed image of politicians, but I'm glad the NDIS is back with Bill Shorten. I am.
Yeah, one thing which has definitely been missing is people being heard. Yeah. And I think we haven't seen the proof of the pudding yet, but at this stage we know people are being heard, and Bill Shorten's taking the time to listen. So I think at the very start at least that's a good step. What advice would you give to those that are about to go through that AAT process? You're talking about prep. Is there anything else that you would say?
I can imagine for some people the thought of the process could be quite triggering because you're going to tribunal. It's not just a plan review. This is a big official external process. Keep in good contact with your worker. Remain positive if you need notes or anything like that with you to jot your mind. Go in with an open mind. I believe it's not a negative process. These people are professionals. They make you feel comfortable. And I think after a month, if you haven't heard back, it's advisable to try and reach out and get an update. It's not unknown, I believe, to go have that contact for a period of a month. But I've looked on the website. It's actually a very user-friendly website. There's lots of useful videos and stuff like that, and it's broken down quite easily. And it would be a good thing for the person who's going to the tribunal to actually have a look at some of that stuff with maybe a worker or a family member to see what the process is before. The website www.aat.gov.au has a lot of it's very interactive, a lot of videos, and even for people in the profession themselves to actually watch it, it's very helpful.
Yeah, so it's not just about kind of supporting the individual, but so you being equipped so that in the situation if something comes up on the call, then you can assist as well.
It's informative and educational, yeah. So if you the mind where, okay, this is what we're going to do, if you look at this first, you'll probably find things that, oh, we haven't done that, we haven't done that, we haven't done that. And you can actually you can go onto the website to actually lodge the appeal, or you can write a letter or send an email. You can even send a fax.
Past the tribunal, there is one final step if you have a decision in the tribunal you disagree with, and that's federal court.
Yes.
Which, that sounds scary. It is an option if people have the funds to be lawyered up in federal court to go to that, but people have found success. Someone who was rejected at every single stage went to federal court. The federal court went through different definitions of words during the application process, and actually from that decision they were allowed access to the NDIS, but also the definitions for those words have now been expanded because that's federal court that gives precedent to all those future decisions. And so now the tribunal, in their cases recently, have quoted that in their decisions. So it is an option, and it's something to at least be aware of because those decisions impact everybody else.
Yeah, and it's fortunate that is there. If you go through the NDIA review through to the AAT, and then you have to go federal, but on the federal level, big changes can happen. So if they then approve something or reverse the decision, as you said, that goes back down the line. And that's how we make changes. And that's why I'm so sort of persistent at chasing certain little things that we've just mentioned, memberships and stuff like that, because, if this is good for one person, it could be good for many.
So you mentioned there's an official title for a review?
Yeah, it's a Section 48 or S48. That is the document that can be found online for early intervention or early plan review. That can be filled out by yourself or with your worker, usually better with a worker, and then emailed off to the NDIA or the NDIA.
So the Section 48, that's the name of the application that you put in?
Yeah, the form is called a Section 48 review under the NDIS Act of 2013.
So say you ask for a review on January 1st, and then the review is accepted February 31st. Yeah. So for those 2 months, when the new plan's put into place, it's backdated onto that plan?
The plan will likely be backdated, yes. So, but until that new plan or review has come through, whether it's approved or rejected, that plan before that review is still accessible.
Thank you, Glenn. This has been amazing. I think listening back to these episodes, it's clear to see that some of this stuff can really help.
Yeah.
And so for everyone at home, I hope you appreciated this as much as I did. Thank you again, Glenn.
You're very welcome.
And hopefully we'll see you in a future episode, and we'll see you all in future episodes.
Thank you.
And may you all live your best life. Thanks.